Hello, we're here with Capita's Director of Innovation, Alan Linter. Alan, hello.
Hello.
And Customer Experience Innovation Principal, James Brooks.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to have the two of you here to talk about the future of technology. Lots of exciting revolutions happening at the moment, lots of ways in which Capita can make them work to improve customer experience for our customers. It's also perfect timing because we've just had CES, which is the global stage of innovation at Las Vegas. You look remarkably fresh, considering you just stepped off the plane from Las Vegas. What did it tell you about where we're going as technological consumers? What's in store for us? Should we be excited, baffled, nervous? Where do you think it's going?
I think the observations in terms of it is that the onset of technology is huge. I think in terms of potentially the expenditure consumers are going to have to make to bring new technology into their house, which is a challenge in itself, I think. And there's an interesting challenge between that consumerism of upgrading things and moving to a new digital, and the buzzword was the intelligence of things, not Internet of Things at the conference world, and actually having a social conscience about recyclability in a cyclical economy. So there's some interesting trade-offs there for consumers to have in their mind about actually some great new functionality and assets and digital innovations coming down the pipe in terms of particularly smart home, in terms of a huge presence there. But at the same time, there was quite a big thing about having a social conscience and the carbon footprint of the
Big
technology.
changes for us, do you think? I mean, can you really see revolutions in the next 5 years or so?
I think certainly, I think there's some really good technology there that some of it, whether it was quite right for everybody, I think some of the stuff in smart home, certainly, I think some of the answers it can bring to the problems of an ageing population was certainly pushed home, I think. It was a big, health and well-being was a really big focus. I think the notion, maybe a step away from previous years when it's been a view of because we can type technology, and that doesn't necessarily mean because you could, but another phrase was, people really focus on applied technology, not just smart things that were AI or driven by AI or technology, but actually solving a problem. And one of those big problems I think the world is facing is an aging population, problems like dementia and Alzheimer's, growing exponentially potentially because of that, and then the challenges of keeping people living independently longer. So that was one of the positive sides of the use of technology I think that took out. That will be, I think, really beneficial in society and solve a real problem that all modern and economies are facing. In terms of, on the back of the baby boomers, a big glut in extended living and a need how do you cope with that. So whether that's preventative or predictive AI in the world of medicine was really exciting, but also in terms of smart home and the technology there to be able to look for patterns and keep people independent longer was really interesting.
It's a show which is sort of famous for being outrageous and daft as much as it is revolutionary. There's some great tech and there's some stuff where you think, how on earth did they ever come up with ideas like that and how is it ever going to work? I mean, James, did you see anything like that? Because I know you keep a close eye on this. So did you see any advances where you think, yeah, that's really going to work, and others where you thought, no, not a chance?
Well, we see a lot of that stuff. I think autonomous vehicles is probably the one where we see the most outlandish stuff. So some of the concept cars and designs that come out there, so we saw a lot of things which, a lot of wood in the design of the interiors, for example. So the car itself is designed to be essentially like a living room, and this idea that it's completely autonomous and give you back that leisure time. And I think that's one of the things that we talked about last year, is that time is the new currency. And so increasing the leisure time for people by having all this kind of smart and connected devices taking away some of the tasks that you don't necessarily want to do because it's learning about you and the things that you have to do on in your daily routines. It kind of does it for you now. So I think some of that will come. There's a big sort of reliance on 5G and how good is that going to be. If it's going to be as good as everyone says it is, a lot of hype around that at the moment. So that'll be interesting. We saw Uber's kind of air taxi as well, so that was their last year. We saw it again this year, so they're still talking about that.
You're going to see it for year after year after year until it eventually flies.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely huge, and it's not really too discernible from an actual helicopter itself, apart from the fact that it's using kind of electric, isn't it, rather than obviously fuel. Yeah. So
it's huge, the view that there's 5,000 exhibits in terms of the technology, weeding through what I think is relevant for customer management in particular, and working out. We probably came back with a dozen people that we thought that's going to make a difference, and we can work with those people or that type of technology and weave it into the customer experience or customer.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask, because you look at it with your customer experience eyes. and look for technology that can make a real difference in that area. And quite often that's tucked away in a little corner somewhere on a little booth, which isn't getting a great deal of attention. So did you see things there where you thought, yeah, for customer experience, this could really make a difference?
Yeah, I think a couple of things we saw were really interested us. And it was quite a theme, actually. So translation. So this world of making the world a smaller place from that point of view is really interesting. From the handheld devices that's translated. But one of the challenges we think sometimes having contact centres is dealing with multilingual environments. And it's pretty straightforward when you're dealing with text. But we found somebody we're really excited about. They've got an SDK. We had quite a long conversation with them. They developed the ability to translate conversations in real time between and from 137 different languages, which can be used in a contact centre. So the notion that irrespective of what language you're contacting somebody in, that person can hear that host language in their host language and answer in their host language, and yet the contactor or the customer would hear in the language that they contacted in, is a real challenge that we've faced, how you deal with that. So that, if we can make that work and that technology is as good as we think it is from the conversations, that'll be really exciting for us.
James, I know you've always been interested in sort of how AI can support agents themselves in terms of helping them, helping them with the screens and prompting the material. Did you see stuff there then?
We did, yeah. So this concept of the keyboardless agent. So we went, and we saw a couple of things which were interesting. So we saw kind of mind control for the first time. Seriously, mind control, yeah. So they had
that's not mind control of people. That's mind control of devices.
That's stuff, yeah. So we saw a couple of applications of that. So one was using or controlling a prosthetic limb, so being able to control his hand essentially, so control fingers and touch and feel, which was good. But the second one was actually controlling a Skylectric, which had kind of people from the audience being able to take part and actually see it work. And it was interesting to see kind of how it made that work. So it's more about it picking up the brainwaves around kind of concentration and focus to make something work. And there's two kind of ways that happens. So one, you could physically look at the camera and say kind of move and trying to make it move. But it's more that it's the idea of being able to focus on something to make those brainwaves happen for something to take place after that. So they were saying
Did you try it at all?
We didn't get to try it, but we saw people doing it. And basically they were saying if you can just read this and concentrate on reading out a script, for example, that will make the car go, and we saw that happen live. So that was pretty interesting. But in addition to that, and probably more realistic for us, was we saw some eye tracking software, where you can kind of calibrate your eyes on the screen and it follows your eyes, and then you can make, by just looking at the screen very accurately, stuff happen. So the application that we saw was a game. Essentially, you kind of shot down asteroids by just looking at them like this. You don't have to move your head, but to make the points. And being able to maybe have that on your desktop, you could just look at a menu, hit yes, hit no, hit another action, essentially doing kind of button presses just using your eyes. So I think that kind of speaks to the keyboardless agent, but also for people with disabilities, and makes us much more inclusive in that sense, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that a couple of the recent developments have come from that medical sphere. It's obviously been developed for people maybe with things like locked-in syndrome or motor neuron disease are unable to communicate easily and being able to do that easily through eye movements. But they're now seeing more practical uses of it. So
how would you see that used in the contact centre? Is that agents just looking at screens to call up answers to inquiries and things?
Well, we're really excited about the idea of maybe putting it in lab environments to firstly to track usability of systems, which is interesting in itself. Big complex systems, how usable and how easy to find the information for agents. But secondly, the potential to be something where they can drive with just their eyes, by looking at something and make something happen. It might be a bit scary, a bit futuristic, but I think there could be some use of that in terms of looking at things, and it's exciting. A few of the things have come from that sphere, so I think we're starting to see a lot of cross-interpolation or cross-fertilisation of technologies now. The interesting thing about some of the bigger brands is that everybody's trying to do everything. Yeah. So every technology company is a car manufacturer now in the world of smart cars. So Samsung have cars now, and brands that we've never heard of have cars in terms of home electronic brands. So that should lead to more innovation, hopefully, in terms of more challenging. And I think our challenge in all that is to pick the usability out and potentially find an alternate use for some technology that's been designed for something else.
What about voice control? Because only a few years ago that was almost futuristic and fantasy. Now it seems to be absolutely everything. Did you see loads of examples of that around? And again, any that really impressed you thinking, oh, that's new and different, I could see that being used?
Google were interesting in terms of voice. They're interesting in terms of our takeout was, Amazon are very heavily invested in that Ring world and connected home world, but they were, Google very much trying to set themselves up, it felt like it's the front door. So as they're working with anything and everyone, as opposed to saying, well, you've got to have an Amazon doorbell to use the Alexa or whatever, whereas Google, interestingly, were pretty much at every stand. When Google was integrated, there were Google reps at the stand, which was really interesting.
So taking it seriously,
Taking it seriously in terms of establishing them as the way in, I think. And we went on the, Amazon had a smallish stand, really, didn't they? Whereas Google had quite a big footprint out in the car park and had a whole smart home built and connected, trying to demonstrate it.
The key message of that is that voice is definitely here to stay, and obviously we've dabbled with Alexa skills in the past, and perhaps we should start to look at doing some Google stuff, but it's, voice is going to be here for a long time now, and it's going to be a channel, and can we interact, or can we put our services into the likes of Alexa and Google to kind of say, how do we interact with the contact center that way? So
Anything which inspired you in that way, which made you think, we could use this for this client, or we could use it in that technique? And so
I think just reaching out, and I think we have this idea that the contact center will become one way. It won't be an inbound and an outbound contact center. It will be all outbound, because the customer will just say, Alexa, tell Debenhams to call me now, for example. So why queue anymore? And Debenhams will just, Alexa will take over, book an appointment to call you back at the time that you want to speak to someone. It'll figure out who you want to talk to, why you want to talk to them, and when that person's available, and then make the call when it's time.
And is that ready now? I mean, is that technology around now? It just needs a few tweaks.
Yeah, we've built it. It's live for us. We've built the first minimum viable products of that. It's live. We've got that live in the Alexa store as a skill to deploy now. I think it'll only get bigger. We need to think about, actually, there's multiple ways into that. To your point, that Google is pushing hard into that space to be the front door into that Internet of Things world. I think the other thing that obviously opens up for us from customer management is, and working with our clients, is the consideration about technical support. I think obviously in the perfect world all these things will work, but the need for multiple brands maybe to relate and link together and talk together leads potentially a black hole in technical support for us to think how we establish some effective services for our clients and work to use that technology and understand that technology, what might fall out the end of it in terms of supporting customers using it. It is a big space for us, I think.
Well, that black hole question is an interesting one. When you looked around, did you, this year's show, did you think, actually, there's some stuff missing here? I'm not seeing people do this, or I'm not seeing people do that, or there are good opportunities for us maybe here to fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, one of the biggest sort of wow factors was about personalisation. So Delta keynote, we went to the Delta Airways keynote speech. But the sort of wow moment from their bit, and it was a massive cue to see it, was something that they'd launched as parallel reality, which was quite something. So we've all heard of virtual reality or augmented reality. This was the ability for 100 people to be looking at the same screen and all see a personalised message without any glasses, without any phone augmentation or anything. It was quite something in terms of the way it works. We did break it.
We did break it.
We did break it.
Congratulations.
We stood too close together apparently, and we're always been very close. But it was quite something. So we've got some really interesting, videos and content of that happening. But that was quite wow. And that was a notion of you could move from an airport and see an entirely every screen you looked at was only for you, and was relevant to your flight and you as a person and what you might be interested in. And it was quite.
So that was literally as you walked past the screen, it would adjust to you, and
Just
as the next person walked past, it would adjust to them.
Yeah, so you've got a camera which essentially, when you kind of opt into it, it takes an image of your shape, and everyone's obviously got a unique shape. So it's not doing facial recognition, it's kind of impersonal in that sense, but it is taking your shape, and then as you move around the airport, the cameras are picking you up, and the screen knows exactly what direction to kind of position its message to you at. So yeah, every screen that you look at will just have your information on it.
So effectively, the pixels they've created in these screens are not high definition, but there's 10 facets, horizontal and vertical, to every pixel. So depending on the exact height you're at and the angle you're at, it can present 100 independent screen images at once. Really impressive. They talked about some seamless flows and the view that they could deliver it in your home language. Even if you landed in Tokyo, all the signs will be in English for me and tell me exactly where I'm going and what I need to do and the directions. Our return flight back, I did point out, but as much as taking maybe some of the pain out, it's pretty straightforward. We're all pretty well educated and find our way around airports. They're all pretty much look the same, those yellow signs and everything else. It doesn't solve the issue about security, and it doesn't solve the issue about people taking too much carry on them, which causes the massive scrum of everybody hovering around, and we feel we had to check our bags even though we had carry on. And then we had one bag each, not that we're bitter. So there's some really clever stuff, but there's some bigger problems still in terms of that customer experience to solve. So the personalisation was amazing, and it was a really clever piece of kit, and Delta have co-invested in this startup.
So what ideas did it make you think about for retail then?
It's that personalised experience, and be able to push the relevant thing, or the things that we think individual shoppers are interested in. Be able to market the right products to the right person at the right time. And again, it goes back to the kind of the Boostify and the kind of personalised experience that we want to do online. And it is serving the customer with the right stuff at the right time as they move around the store. And you can obviously gauge with the other technology which is available as to whether they're having a good experience or a bad experience based on their kind of the sentiment and the way that their body reactions are and their facial expressions towards certain displays and things. And if you think you're losing the customer, you can push an offer to stay. Go to the cafe. Here's a voucher for that kind of thing. So
and I think the combination of that with some of the stuff we've played with as well in terms of facial recognition and sentiment and emotion. The good news is I've moved from last year when I was in front of the screens being sad and depressed. I'm now just angry when I'm in front of them, apparently. But so I've moved on a stage in.
Can't wait till next year. Really.
Exactly. What will it be? Maybe next time look at it. But the combination of being able to detect people, understand, they were pretty accurate at guessing ages, weren't they?
Yeah, so it looks at you, it tells you, if it detects if you're male and female, gives you an age range and an age banding, so it got mine pretty much spot on. And then gives a sentiment based on your facial expression, so angry man here, and I think I was generally happy, so. Well,
steady, you were sort of neutral a lot of the time. But the combination of that, being able to identify either somebody who's a person through the things, the Delta type parallel reality experience, or actually where somebody is in their emotions, a combination of those two things give you that ability potential for hyper-personalisation. And I think that's what retail's going to need to reinvent itself in the high street. It's going to have to be different than it is today and think of it. So it's really exciting in terms of what that might mean. And in terms of pushing retail, I think Rejuvenate, there was a lot of smart mirrors there. So that went through Samsung as well.
Were they working better than last year? Because I know they've been around for a while.
So we saw a couple of versions, and it's interesting to see some companies are doing kind of taking your actual image, and some are doing an avatar of you. And I think both had kind of mixed ways of working and successes. But I think the most impressive one was the LG one, which took a full picture and full image of your entire body. It put it as you, as it took the picture, but it did all your measurements at the same time. And then you could pick items of clothing that you wanted to put on yourself. You could turn yourself within the mirror, and it would keep the front. But you could also change the size that you were wearing. So obviously it would know what size you should wear. But if you say, well, I want to wear a shorter leg, for example, you could put that in there, and it would show you what it would look like on you with a shorter measurement.
Show you where the tight. So obviously they've got the same type of scanning for the garments as well. So it show where the tight spots in the garment would be depending on the size you wore, where it would pull and where it would push. So I think you could argue that could help reinvent retailing, but certainly internet shopping. That big problem that pretty much a third of everything that's bought is returned. So that could take a huge cost out of the supply chain of our garments fitting accurately beforehand, and whether it be just expedite that migration out of retail to say I can do it all from home now, because that's to try anything on would be, or whether it would enhance it. I suppose it's about the two. The other big word was phygital. That combination of the physical experience and the digital experience together. So, the image was to say that potentially retailers might, you would have body scanners located in different locations, and once you had a body scan, that might be usable across all retailers. To do that, and have a virtual mirror at home that basically allows you to stand in front of your mirror at home, try on the clothes that you've already got, and combine, or new outfits, or combine the two to say, I'm thinking about this jacket, what would it look like with a pair of trousers I've already got. So lots of people have a lot of fun with that, and in terms of...
Did you find anything that particularly suited?
Nothing that suited me. No. Nothing that made me look good, unfortunately. So.
And finally, if you could have taken one gadget away to put in your own home, if you could sneak it in that one bag you took back on the plane, what would it have been?
I don't know. What's yours favourite?
I was really taken back by the eye tracking software, just because it wasn't something we'd considered before, and given how accurate it really was, I think that can make a big difference for us, just in general. But I think we could integrate that quite quickly and quite well.
Yeah, I think for me, given Capita's push of an expansion, really, providing multilingual services as a service, I think the real-time speech translation stuff was really impressive.
You would slip that into a bag.
Yeah.
Taking it apart,
a
see how it
version
works.
of, exactly, a version of that won the Last Gadget Standing, didn't it?
Yes, did you?
Something that was hooked off, so that was really good. And if I could have two,
Yeah.
there was another really impressive bit of kit which I think will revolutionise healthcare. Effectively, they created a device that put a doctor's tooling in the palm of your hand, so you could self-examine. So it had the 6 major devices that a doctor uses, from a stethoscope to a blood rate monitor to an ophthalmoscope to, I'm not sure what it's called, what goes in your ear. All those things are in there, and the ability to connect over 5G to a doctor anywhere. So as much as you couldn't self-prescribe, you could self-assess or evaluate, and they can interpret the results. That should have really won the best gadget, because it's a thing that's going to change life and save world in the third world countries, I suppose.
Or the perfect Christmas present for hypochondriacs everywhere.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. There'll be a lot of digital doctor experiences and healthcare experiences going on. But those two, three were the things that I think we brought back that we were really impressed by.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.